Hey guys, Mary Languish here. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to teach some basic art skills that I think anyone and everyone should learn. We're talking little kids all the way up to adults. If you are a parent or an art teacher or someone who wants to just learn to teach art to people, this video is for you. I'm going to go through 4 different categories with some subcategories about how to teach some of these basic concepts and maybe why you want to teach them. So let's dive in. First category is drawing. Now, I firmly believe that drawing is a super important skill that every artist should learn how to do. So with drawing, you can't really start too young. I think drawing can go with any age category. You can teach it to anybody. The first thing you want to do is you want to teach them how to break things down into basic shapes. So no matter what they're learning to draw, how can you break it down into smaller shapes? There's no right or wrong to this, by the way. You can break it down however you want to. You might watch me and be like, that's not how I would have done it, but that's totally fine. As you're teaching them this, also teach them to draw lightly. This is a skill that's really hard, even for older aged kids, like high schoolers, is how do you not push so hard that you're indenting the paper, staining the paper? These types of things can be just difficult. So reminding them, lighter pressure, don't get nervous, don't push too hard. Your lines don't have to be perfect. You don't have to commit to each line right away. When you're starting with basic shapes, it's not going to be the end all be all, right? You're literally just mapping out where things are going to go, what's the general shape you see within a shape, and then you're going to fill in the missing information. Something like that, right? Pretty basic. As you're teaching them this, you're really teaching them about hand-eye coordination as well, helping them practice how to work with their hand and their eye and their brain all together, right? This is a really important skill to understand. And younger ages will have a harder time with this, whereas older ages will have mastered how to use a pencil, right? But a part of this, and as you're teaching how to do shapes, you can also teach a step-by-step method. Students learn really well if they learn how to copy you. So if you can do a step-by-step drawing of an image using basic shapes, they're learning how to do basic shapes, they're learning how to break things down into basic shapes, but they're also following you in the correct order in which to do those shapes. Amazing skills to learn, helps their drawing so much. And then along with the drawing, is learning how to color or shade smoothly. I think this is one that is really hard for even older ages to just sort of master. And it depends on the different mediums you're working with too. So, training them how to color with a marker smoothly. Using the side of the marker is really helpful. You want them to learn how to break out of that scribbling, messy stage, right? Because a lot of art can be well executed and its end result looks good, but the actual process of applying the materials to the surface is messy, it's unprofessional. And so if you can train them how to color and shade smoothly, they can take their art to the next level. You just want them to learn how to fill in an area, whether it's from a gradient from one color to another, a value to another. You want it to be blended, smooth, rich in color. It just is teaching them how to use their materials professionally. And then the last thing in this drawing section is just mark making. I think there's so many people that get stuck in their art because they just don't know like what marks they can make with the materials they're using, right? And so with every material, giving them some examples, showing them examples of what marks you can make with that material. So things like pastel. Markers, paint, brushes, every tool you're using is going to create a different mark. So having them create either a little dictionary, a little chart, a little sketchbook that has just mark making in it, trying different things, using things as inspiration, whether that's from nature or the things in the room or things on their body, you know, like things like that to teach them about different marks that you can make. It's all about learning how to manipulate your hand and the material and moving your wrist, moving your arm to create different marks, because there's so much you can make, right? And we get stuck in this basic line making or basic dot making, and you want to expand that vocabulary for them. Now moving on to materials. So I think a big part of being an art teacher and teaching people about art is also teaching them just about using materials, which I kind of showed you a little bit already. But things like basic materials, you know, how do you hold a pencil, something we all learn at a really early age. And so reinforcing that, teaching them that a paintbrush is not a pencil, right? And how you hold it, how you manipulate the bristles on the end is going to be very different than a pencil. And that is something that you need to learn and practice. Different brushes, different sizes and shapes have different uses. Things like, what is artist tape used for? How do you put it down? How do you rip it off without ripping your picture? Things like paint. How much paint do you apply to a palette? What kind of paint are we using? Does it require lots of water? Does it require no water? Does it require a medium or a solvent? These types of things are just really, really important to be teaching. How are oil pastels different from chalk pastels? Also important because they're going to apply onto a paper very differently. What are the different types of surfaces you can work on? Canvases, different types of paper, hot press, cold press, textured paper, newsprint, textured surfaces of some kind, wood, sandpaper. What do even just the numbers on our basic pencil drawing set, our drawing pencil sets mean? The numbers and the letters, like that type of thing is really important to be teaching your kids. And teaching them about the different materials and different tools. You can create so many fun different projects, so many fun assignments related to those things. And so don't let that, you know, the boringness of materials sometimes stop you from being creative with the projects that you come up with. Now let's move on to color. I think teaching your students about color is super important. And no matter the age, I am teaching about color and a basic color theory or color wheel of some kind to whatever age I'm teaching. Now, it can be as basic as you're just teaching them about their primaries and secondaries. So I always do a color wheel. Teaching them about their primaries, their secondaries, and their tertiaries, how they mix, not just teaching them, especially at a young age, not just doing something on a whiteboard or on paper, but actually giving them the chance to mix these colors themselves and playing with different materials and how to mix them, because different materials are gonna respond and act differently, create slightly different colors. And so having that experience of actually doing it is important. So I often, when I'm teaching this, will give them only their primaries in whatever medium we're using for the class, a yellow, a red, and a blue, and they have to mix the rest of their colors on their own as we're doing it together as a class, because I think that's the best way to learn this, is to kind of do it step by step together. As they get older, introduce things like complementary colors, neutrals, tones, tints, shades. There's so much you can teach. There's so much you can learn. If you need to expand your vocabulary on color theory, there's a lot of interesting books and really helpful books out there and content out there. I have a video that I'll link down in the description of my books that I like as an artist, and one of them is a color theory book that was really, really beneficial and opened my eyes to a lot of interesting and different vocabulary. So check that out. I also have a course on how to mix colors in 3 different mediums: colored pencil, watercolor, and acrylic. So if that's something that interests you to expand your color mixing knowledge or if to recommend to another student, go check that out in the description below, color mixing course with me. But color is just a big, expansive one, and you can do so many fun projects related to teaching them about color. You can create color wheels that are just a little bit more fun for younger ages, but just a great thing to be teaching, and you can spend multiple weeks on color, and you're just honestly continuing to learn about color even as a teacher. And then the last category is a little bit for the older ages, but you're basically giving them tools to create their own work, essentially. How to better their art making process for themselves. And I think the first thing is, throughout their art education, exposing them to different styles of art, teaching them about some art history, the different famous artists, the different styles, the different time periods of art. I think that's all very beneficial. Having them copy different styles of art, copy famous works, that's all gonna be really, really good for their vocabulary, for just their skills bank in general. And so don't shy away from that stuff when you're teaching really any ages. Teach them about art history, teach them about different styles of art. Super beneficial. I think a big one for me is teaching them, yes, how to paint and draw things realistically, because it's a good skill to have and as accurately as possible. Gives them the skills to then be able to play and break the rules later, so they can really express themselves and create their own original work, right? And so understanding realism all the way to abstraction, true abstraction. What is true abstraction? Not just changing the color of a cat, but like, how do you completely do an abstract piece of work? All these skills are just super, super important and super fun, and you can create so many fun project ideas around art history, art styles. The next thing you want to teach, especially the older ages, is gearing them away from copying things. So a lot of the younger ages, a lot of younger classes, you want to be using photo reference, you want to be doing a step-by-step process, because that's really how they're going to effectively learn how to draw, how to copy, how to see and reproduce, right? And for older ages, they kind of have that down, and you have to sort of move them away from that, because you want them to start to come up with things from their head a little bit more and to be creative and not just copy, paste, right? At least when I was younger and taking art classes, the sort of general rule was, if you're using a reference photo, you want to change it at least 20% in your original work, so that it can be considered yours. Because if you're just copy and pasting, whose work is it really? Yes, you did all this work to make this realistic thing, but was the photo yours, or was it someone else's photo you're using as reference that you're just really good at copying, right? And so you don't want to mess with sort of like whose art is it at the end, the legal copyright side of things. And so it brings me to my next point, is teaching them to take their own photos and to take their own photo references, because I think that's a huge level. Like for me, I don't use other people's photos, other people's art as reference. I might use them as ideas and inspiration or pieces of something, but I try to use my own original bank of photos and inspiration. And so you want to start to teach and train your students to get to that level, because that's what you want them to ultimately rely on in their art making process. And then last but not least is you want to train them how to fill their creative bank account. How do they create art that's original and interesting and never been seen before if they're not filling themselves with other people's art, other inspirations, pictures, traveling, watching different movies and shows, and reading interesting books. Like, you have to be filling your creative bank account to be able to actually produce good art, in my opinion. And so training your kids, your students, to do that is a really, really helpful skill, especially when they come across artist block, kind of like writer's block, is when you get stuck and you don't know what to paint, you don't know what your style is, you don't know where to go from here as an artist. Learning how to fill your creative bank account with ideas is a lifesaver. So don't forget to train and teach your students that. Now, all of these things that I've shared with you are just stepping stones. They're kind of general basic tips and drawing skills, painting skills, material skills that I'm just reminding you of because you already know these things. How do you then incorporate that into a lesson plan? Really easy. Take something like a material, watercolor, and teach them how to paint in different styles in watercolor. Boom, you got a lesson. It could last a few weeks if you want them to create a larger piece of work or something that they can spend their time on. Another example would be, how do you shade or color smoothly? Maybe you do that in a color wheel, right? So you can combine these different things and incorporate them into interesting projects and fun assignments that aren't going to be boring, even though you're teaching them these underlying skills. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check out those links I mentioned below down in the description. And yeah, let me know if you have questions. I love reading comments from other artists and other art teachers and people that are teaching art out there. So please give me some ideas for other videos that I can make to help you out. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a wonderful day and have a great time teaching. Bye.